Welcome to another fan fiction reading. We did the first two chapters of this, and the videos performed really well, especially for my channel. So I'm going to take that as advice to keep going for the next 20 chapters of this thing. Because clearly you guys love it when I read my own fan fiction to you. This is a crossover. That's the name of it. It's just called A Crossover because I named it in 2014 when I was a little baby writer. When I think I was just in high school. I don't think I was a literal baby. But yeah, so chapter 3 is remarkable because it actually has two versions. There's one version that's like much longer, and it's not posted. Like, I basically was working on it, and then I got some feedback on the story, and I decided to change everything. So I scrapped chapter 3 basically entirely, and redid it. So we're going to start with what's public. We're going to read the public version of chapter 3, and then we're going to go back, this like kind of a DVD special features thing, and I'm going to actually read the entirety of the scrapped chapter 3 because it is interesting. Basically, we introduce a bunch of characters. It takes place in the human world still. Like, we're still building up the fact there's going to be ponies in this thing. And so it kind of... I basically ended up moving the characters in the story more so that they're in Equestria instead of taking too much time to go into what's going on back at the lab. Like, it's still there, but it became sort of a much smaller part of the story later on. And so it made a lot more sense to sort of have this point of view character called Lemmy. I guess I introduced Lemmy in chapter 1. Yeah, so like, I'm really smart and good at writing. So I immediately introduced this Lemmy character in chapter 1 as our point of view guy, and then he meets Celestia immediately, and that way you've got a clearer idea of like, okay, you know, there's Celestia, she can travel the dimensions because she's powerful like that. And it sort of gives you a hint that, hey, we're not going to be staying here for very long. Anyway, that's enough rambling, I think. So we'll go right into the story. Chapter 3, Traveling to an Office. The Spellbots had taken Celestia and Lemmy to an elevator, which two had operated silently, leaving the rest to stand in a crowd outside and slowly watch as it ascended. The industrial elevator was fairly standard, with a faded wallpaper that may have been green at some point. There were 9 numbers on the control panel, and as Lemmy watched, the light moved from the 9 to the 8. His curiosity got the better of him, and he spoke. Princess, what's going to happen to me? The princess smiled at him gently as she replied, well, you're going to go home and never be bothered by these robots ever again. Oh, Lemmy said. So I won't see you again? It is unfortunate, but I have many duties back in Equestria that cannot be postponed forever. I wish there was more time to spend in your world. It is truly fascinating. Princess Celestia glanced over at the control panel, noting that the number 1 was lit. And for you audio people, well, the number 1 is the actual number instead of 1 spelled out. And earlier in the chapter, I say 9 and 8, and I spell those out. Just a little inconsistency to keep you on your toes. It looks like we're here. Come along. The Spellbots exited first, then the princess and Lemmy stepped out. The room they were in was full of greenery. It was the same dome he had seen from the outside, and tropical plants surrounded the small, rocky path that led away from the elevator. The sound of rushing water emanated from further down the trail. Celestia set off, and a robot hurried to take the lead. Its partner floated along in the back of the group. As they walked through the greenhouse, Lemmy luxuriated in the beautiful plants and their wonderful odors. He stepped past neat lines of tiny ferns. Here and there, hostas and daylilies grew next to stringy plants with red hairs and drops of liquid on their tentacle-like leaves. There were plenty of palm trees as well, and hibiscus-carpeted swaths of sunny ground near the greenhouse walls. The group reached a wooden bridge that crossed an indoor river. The water was seasoned with leaves and petals. After they finished crossing, the robots hummed ahead to an imposing iron door. The spellbots put their swords inside 2 locks on either side of it, and when they turned them, it slowly began to rise with a mechanical whine. Celestia leaned over to Lemmy. On the other side of that door is Mr. Old's office. I must warn you, he does keep several sharks as pets. Don't worry, they're well fed before appointments. She stood upright again and walked towards the door as the whining came to a halt. The robots turned their swords again, and with a ka-chunk, it locked into place. Lemmy followed the princess into the dark and cold space beyond. Okay, so that's the public chapter. It looks like I was editing this. I edited it multiple times because I had changed the first chapter in 2021, and then I went back later in the year and changed it again. So I put notes in there. So that's cool. And then, yeah, in part 2 of this, I'll try and line my shot up better so that I look more visible. And we'll take a look at our lost level of a chapter.